Well, here we are, my 10th review. I decided it should be something simple, as I've stuck with doing these for about 2 months now, which is an impressive feat for me. So I've decided that I'd do a review on Streets of Rage. To those who don't know, I've already reviewed this game a bit over 4 years ago. I have a link to the original review in the description to this video in case anybody really wants to read it. I reread it and really disliked how much it lacked in detail, but now I'm doing these in video, I can elaborate a bit more with specifics, instead of just making people read a wall of text. To me, it's a bit more interesting. But enough of the introductions, let's get on to the game. Once again, I'm reviewing Streets of Rage this time around. It's a classic beat 'em up on the Sega Genesis. To me, this game easily makes the top 10 best Genesis games, if not top 3. If there's 2 games I enjoyed more, it was Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Phantasy Star 4. But that's not the point. This game is just plain epic. The story is pretty cliché. A bunch of thugs and gangsters take over the city with corruption, which includes the government and police force. 3 ex-cops get fed up and hit the street to hand out their own version of justice. You can watch the introduction to get the same story with some pretty dramatic music. After the intro, you'll see the bios of all 3 characters. I just love how Axel loves video games. Neat. The title screen is pretty basic. You choose to start the game with solo or with a friend, or you can get into the options. Just to warn you though, the 2-player co-op play does contain friendly damage, so it's possible to kill each other. As for the options, they're pretty typical. You got your difficulty settings, sound test, and controls. Nothing of which I really need to go into detail for, because it's all pretty obvious. Once you decide to start the game, you get taken to the character selection screen. Choose carefully, as although each one only has one weakness, the only way to switch characters again is to start over. Adam is the slowest, but he has a wicked roundhouse kick and seems to have the best range with weapons. Axel is about average, but apparently his jumping skills are lacking, so you'll never see him with a good basketball game. Blaze lacks power, but makes up for it in range and speed. However, the biggest differences between each character are the combos available and the looks. The first stage greets you with a pretty badass opening song. That's the first thing I've really noticed about the game, is the music. It's all going to get in your head. It's bass heavy, and sounds like something that might go in a club. But whether you like the club scene or not, it's great music. Every stage has something that fits just right and keeps you motivated to keep playing. I think there's only one song, maybe 2 at most, that repeats, but again, you probably won't mind anyway. The other cool thing about the music is that when it's time to fight a boss, it slowly fades out and the boss music kicks in soon after. It's a very smooth transition, and it's pretty sweet. Another thing that's really smooth about the game is the graphics. They have almost a gritty look to them, which fits the game perfectly. Each stage also has something that brings it to life. The first stage is the main drag, so you'll see plenty of phone booths that can get destroyed and neon lights advertising companies. The slums contain posters that are about ready to blow off the wall, and debris that's getting thrown around from the wind. The beach stage has waves that crash against the sand, and the occasional spray of water. Although, in all honesty, come on, that could have been drawn a little bit better. Even the breakable objects in the game are featured in stages that would be expected to contain such things. It's one of those things where the developers did everything possible to make sure the world looked believable. The characters are pretty believable too. Other than the boss characters, all look pretty realistic and none of them have any real unusual moves. Martial artists have a tendency of jumping higher than you and then super kicking you, but it's not like the bastards are going to spam fireballs at you. As for your personal moves, there are not really any secret moves that you can perform by hitting certain button combinations. You have your basic attacks. If you manage to touch an enemy directly, you grapple them, allowing you to knee them in the gut. In this stance, you can press the direction away from you and B to launch them in the other direction, taking out everything in the enemy's path. If you press C to jump, you'll vault to the character's back, allowing you to suplex the enemy to the ground. You can do 3 regular hits in the grapple stance before the enemy breaks contact by falling to the ground due to sustained hits. There's a few enemies that can do the same though, so make sure you don't get too close and you don't allow any of them to sneak behind you. In fact, the one boss loves that, and I'll get to that when I get to the bosses of the game. In addition to your regular attacks, you can also pick up weapons. These consist of knives, bats, pipes, bottles, and smoke bombs. The smoke bombs don't do any damage, but can stun your opponent for a few seconds. I never found them to be particularly useful. The knives aren't bad, but you can also throw them. I've never actually figured out how to throw them, as I swear it just seems random. The bat and pipe are similar, except in range. I always thought it was odd how the characters held these weapons though. They just look off. The bottle is cool because on the first hit, the bottle shatters. Other than that, it's just your basic weapon. Once you pick up a weapon, with the exception of the knife and smoke bomb, it can't be dropped unless an enemy strikes you. However, if the weapon falls to the ground 3 times, it'll disappear. I guess they just don't make weapons like they used to. You can beat in the heads of 100 thugs, but if it falls in the sand 3 times, it breaks. In addition to these, you get one other special attack, and you're limited on how many of these you get. You start each stage with one, and if you use it, you only get another one if you pick up a special power-up, die, or finish the stage. If you pick up the power-up while you still have one, you'll get a second. You'll never have more than 2 at a time though. If you're playing co-op with a friend, each player gets one. This can be considered overkill for most enemies, even bosses. And why is that? Your special attack is this bad boy. A police car will come and some guy will fire an RPG to destroy everything on the screen. For bosses, it takes out a chunk of health. It's a neat little attack, but there's also a few little quirks with it. First, your player isn't damaged at all by it. Second, the enemies just stand there staring at it. They don't attempt to run at all. Sorry, but if a rocket comes towards me, I'm going to run like hell away from it. Third, the driver of the car has got to be one of the best drivers ever. He can navigate any path, construction zones, beaches, even the inside of a factory. And the shooter is equally as good, as no matter where he fires from, he always hits his target. He can shoot an RPG inside of a factory and not hit the roof. He can also properly judge elevation to fire the rocket from the ground onto a moving elevator. Now, that's pretty damn good. The only problem is that the specials aren't available in the last stage. I guess there was no way they could airdrop the car into the gangster boss's mansion. The regular enemies are nothing to be really worried about. As long as you keep your distance, you can pummel them all you want without being hurt too badly. If you start getting overcome though, be careful, because it doesn't take long to be defeated, especially in harder difficulties. Later on you'll see the same enemies, but with different colored uniforms. These guys are naturally harder. The ones with the spiked hair have a nasty tendency of either sliding at you or grabbing you and throwing you to the ground. The girls enjoy whipping you, and not in a good way. The martial arts guys are easily defeated, but they can be pretty quick to get behind you for a swift kick. There's also jugglers, which juggle either axes or some sort of flaming object. They have no problems throwing them your way though. Now we get on to the bosses. Most of them are pretty easy, but a few are just excruciatingly difficult. The first guy just kicks you and throws you a curved sword, which he expects you to catch, but if you do, you get hurt anyway. And if he misses, it just comes ricocheting back like a boomerang. The second boss is a tall guy who wears claws. Like many of the bosses, grappling him, doing 2 hits, and then a throw is the best way to take him down. But he has a move where he becomes invulnerable to damage and rushes you, doing 2 swipes. The third boss is a wrestler wearing nothing but short tights. All he does is try to rush and then punch you to the ground. If you take care of his pals, you can just stand in one place and jump kick him. Or, my favorite, move until he attacks, then grab him and knee him right in the balls. Seriously, check it out. That's not a gut check. You can't tell me that's not painful. Boss number 4 is a fat dude who must have ate a shitload of buffalo wings, as he just runs at you spitting fire. I guess it's better than him spitting it and not doing something else. The 5th stage is on a boat, and the bosses are 2 twins. These girls are nothing to laugh at. They're easily the toughest boss in the game. You can't grapple them, as they'll just reverse it and judo your ass to the ground. They'll do a lot of jumping around, making it very difficult to actually land any sort of offense. The best way that I've found to kill them are to try to judge where they'll be and try to line both of them up on the same side. Then just start punching. Another method that works well is to keep jump kicking and not stopping. It's not easy, as they'll jump out of the way to avoid many of your attacks. Most of my lives are wasted on this stage. You fight 2 claw guys in the next stage, the factory. Same strategy applies here though. The elevator to the penthouse suite has no boss, but it's just wave after wave of enemies. The biggest thing about this stage is to not fall off the elevator, but it's strangely satisfying to throw the thugs off yourself, especially once you get to the higher elevations. After this, you enter the penthouse, and get to fight in what is the absolute longest hallway I have ever seen in my life. You fight each boss one more time in here, including the twins that are now guarding the office of the Thug Master. Once you get in here, the boss will ask you if you want to be his right-hand man. If playing 2 players and each person chooses a different option, you'll be forced to fight each other. If you choose yes, I think it's a game over. I can't remember. If you choose no, which you should, you fight a few waves of basic enemies, and then the boss himself. This bastard doesn't fight fair. He packs a machine gun and won't hesitate to open fire, while occasionally rushing you with the butt end of it. When he does fire, your character shows how badass they really are. You can jump kick or even punch the bullets away. They must have learned this from Chuck Norris. In case you do get badly defeated, you do get 3 continues. You also earn extra lives every 50,000 points. There's also an extra life power-up as well, but it's pretty rare. There's not really much else to say about the game. It's nearly flawless. The difficulty is just right, the music is catchy as hell, and the graphics make the game completely believable. There's no save system, but the game can be completed in about 30 minutes or so, since there's only 8 stages. Although the game's story is the main weak part, in that it's pretty generic, I don't care. I'm still giving this game a 10 out of 10. As always, I'm Reaper. Happy fragging.